What's up, everyone? You know I don't usually get personal on this channel, but today's different. Today I'm going to tell you about the time I lived with a psychopath. And no, I'm not being dramatic. By the end of this story, you'll understand why I never show my face, why I keep my location secret, and why I sleep with a baseball bat next to my bed. So grab some popcorn, turn off the lights, and settle in. This one's going to mess with your head. My name is Jake Morrison, and 18 months ago, I thought I'd found the perfect living situation. I was 25, working as a software developer in Austin, Texas, making decent money, but not enough to afford a place on my own in the city. Housing prices were insane, and I was getting tired of sleeping on friends' couches. That's when I found Derek's Craigslist ad. Professional seeking responsible roommate for luxury downtown apartment. $800 month, all utilities included. Must be clean, quiet, and drama-free. References required. The photos looked incredible. Floor-to-ceiling windows, granite countertops, a balcony overlooking the city. The kind of place I'd dreamed about living in but never thought I could afford. I called the number immediately. Derek Hartwell answered on the second ring. His voice was smooth, confident, the kind of voice that belonged in a boardroom or a radio booth. He sounded like success. "Jake Morrison?" he said, like he'd been expecting my call. "I looked up your LinkedIn profile after you emailed. Impressive work history. When can you come see the place?" We met that afternoon. Derek was everything his voice suggested. Tall, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that made you want to trust him immediately. The apartment was even better than the photos. Clean, modern, perfectly organized. "I travel a lot for work," Derek explained as he showed me around. "Consulting. I'm gone maybe 2 weeks out of every month, so you'd have the place to yourself most of the time." It seemed too good to be true. And you know what they say about things that seem too good to be true? Derek asked the usual questions: employment history, references, lifestyle habits. I told him I was a quiet guy, spent most of my time coding, didn't party much. He seemed pleased with that. "I value privacy," he said, "and I expect the same from my roommate. We're both adults. We both have our own lives. As long as we respect each other's space, this should work out perfectly." I signed the lease that day. First month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, nearly $3,000 up front. It hurt my bank account, but I told myself it was worth it for a place like this. The first month was everything Derek had promised. He was gone for 2 weeks, and when he was home, he was the perfect roommate. Quiet, clean, friendly, but not intrusive. He worked late. I worked late. We'd nod at each other in the kitchen and go our separate ways. But then I started noticing things. This is where it gets weird, folks, where the perfect roommate starts showing his true colors. It began with my food disappearing. Not entire meals, just little things. A few slices of bread, some leftover pizza, half a carton of milk. When I mentioned it to Derek, he was apologetic. "Sorry, man, I was running late for my flight and grabbed something quick. I'll replace it." And he did. He always replaced what he took, often with something even better. But it kept happening. My shampoo would be nearly empty when I was sure it had been half full. My laundry detergent would run out faster than it should have. My toothpaste would be squeezed from the middle instead of the bottom, the way I always did it. "Sorry, emergency," Derek would say each time. "I'll get you a new one." I started to feel like I was living with a ghost. Derek would be gone for work, but I'd come home to find small things moved or changed. My coffee mug in a different spot. My laptop charger unplugged. My bedroom door slightly ajar when I knew I'd closed it. When I mentioned these things to Derek, he had explanations for everything. The cleaning lady must have moved my mug. The maintenance guy had to check the electrical outlets. He'd heard a noise from my room and wanted to make sure everything was okay. All perfectly reasonable explanations, but they started to add up. Then there was the smell. Every few weeks, there would be this strange odor in the apartment. Not quite rotten, not quite chemical, but definitely wrong. It was strongest near Derek's room, but it would drift through the whole place. "Sorry about that," Derek said when I brought it up. "I've been experimenting with some new protein powders. Some of them smell pretty rank." I accepted the explanation, but the smell bothered me. It reminded me of something, but I couldn't place what. The breaking point came 3 months into our living arrangement. I'd been working late on a particularly challenging project, pulling all-nighters to meet a deadline. I was surviving on coffee and energy drinks, barely sleeping. Derek was supposed to be out of town for work, so I had the place to myself. On Thursday night, I finally finished the project around 3 a.m. I was exhausted, my eyes were burning, and I just wanted to crash. But as I was getting ready for bed, I heard something. Footsteps in Derek's room. I froze, listening carefully. Derek wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday. His room should have been empty. The footsteps moved around the room, slow and deliberate. Then I heard his door open. I crept to my bedroom door and listened. More footsteps, moving through the living room toward the kitchen. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold, the sound of my laptop being opened. I'd left it on the kitchen counter, plugged in and charging. Someone was using it. I grabbed my phone and opened the security app Derek had shown me when I moved in. The apartment had a basic system: motion sensors, door alarms, cameras in the common areas. Derek had given me access, saying it was for both our safety. The camera feed showed Derek sitting at the kitchen counter, typing on my laptop. Derek, who was supposed to be in Dallas for a client meeting. I watched him for 20 minutes, trying to figure out what he was doing. He seemed to be going through my files, my emails, my browsing history. He took photos of my screen with his phone, then carefully closed my laptop and put it back exactly where I'd left it. Then he disappeared back into his room. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Why would Derek lie about being out of town? Why was he going through my personal files? The next morning, I got a text from Derek. "Hey man, flight got delayed. Won't be back until Monday now. Client emergency. Sorry for the short notice." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. Derek was in his room. I'd seen him on the security camera, but he was texting me like he was hundreds of miles away. I called in sick to work and spent the day researching. I looked up Derek's consulting company, tried to verify his employment, searched for any information about him online. What I found chilled me to the bone. Derek Hartwell didn't exist. Let me say that again for the people in the back. My roommate, the guy I'd been living with for 3 months, the guy who had access to my personal space and my belongings, didn't exist. There was no record of him anywhere. No LinkedIn profile, no Facebook page, no professional history. The consulting company he claimed to work for had never heard of him. The references he'd provided were all fake phone numbers. I was living with a ghost. I dug deeper, running background checks, searching public records, anything I could think of. Finally, I found something. A news article from 2 years ago. Local man missing after roommate dispute. The photo showed a young guy named Marcus Webb, about my age, with dark hair and a friendly smile. According to the article, Marcus had been renting a room from a man named David Kellerman when he suddenly disappeared. His family reported him missing when he stopped showing up to work and didn't return their calls. David Kellerman was never found either. But in the article's background details, I found something that made my stomach drop. Marcus Webb had been a software developer. He'd been looking for affordable housing in Austin. He'd answered a Craigslist ad for a luxury apartment downtown. The same ad I'd answered. I kept digging, going back further. I found 2 more missing person reports from the past 5 years. Different names, different cities, but the same pattern. Young professional men looking for roommates, answering ads for luxury apartments, then disappearing without a trace. All of them had been living with men who didn't exist. I was in my apartment with a serial killer. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like a movie, right? Like some Netflix thriller. But I'm telling you, this was real. This was my life. I sat in my room that afternoon, door locked, trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't call the police. What would I tell them? That my roommate was using a fake name? That he'd lied about being out of town? That he'd looked at my computer? I needed proof. Real evidence that Derek was dangerous. I decided to search his room. I waited until that evening, when I was sure Derek was asleep. I'd heard him moving around earlier, then silence for hours. I crept out of my room and listened at his door. Nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. But I remembered something from when I'd first moved in. Derek had given me a spare key to his room, saying it was for emergencies. I'd put it in my desk drawer and forgotten about it. I retrieved the key and carefully unlocked Derek's door. The smell hit me immediately. That strange odor I'd noticed before, but concentrated now. Sweet and rotten and metallic all at once. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate the room. It looked normal at first glance. Bed, dresser, desk, closet. But as I looked closer, I started noticing details that made my skin crawl. The bed was perfectly made, but the sheets were stained. Dark stains that looked like they'd been scrubbed but hadn't come out completely. The closet was full of clothes, but they were all different sizes. Some would fit Derek, others were too small, others too large. Like he'd collected them from different people. And then I found the box. It was under the bed, a plain cardboard box that was heavier than it looked. Inside were driver's licenses, dozens of them, all different names, all different faces, but all young men who looked vaguely similar to me. Marcus Webb was there. So were the other missing men I'd found in the news articles. And there were more, men I hadn't heard of, men who might not have been reported missing yet. At the bottom of the box was a notebook, a journal, written in Derek's handwriting. I opened it to a random page and started reading. Subject shows promising characteristics. Isolated from family, limited social connections, regular schedule. Preliminary surveillance indicates minimal risk of immediate discovery. Beginning integration phase. I flipped to another page. Subject responding well to conditioning. Food displacement and territory invasion producing expected anxiety responses. Trust levels remain high despite increasing stressors. Ready for phase 2. Another page. Subject becoming suspicious. May need to accelerate timeline. Considering disposal options. The journal was full of entries like this, clinical observations about different subjects. The handwriting changed from entry to entry, like Derek was taking notes on different people. I was mentioned in the most recent entries. Jake Morrison, software developer, age 25, minimal family contact, works from home frequently, ideal candidate, moved in 3 months ago, showing expected trust patterns despite minor suspicions, ready for final phase. Final phase. I took pictures of everything, the licenses, the journal entries, the stained sheets. Then I carefully put everything back and locked Derek's door. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my room with a chair pushed against the door, trying to figure out my next move. The police would take the evidence seriously now. I had photos of driver's licenses belonging to missing persons, journal entries describing surveillance and disposal, physical evidence of violence. But I had a problem. Derek was in the apartment. If I called the police, he might hear me. And if he realized I'd discovered his secret, I might not live long enough for help to arrive. I needed to get out of the apartment and call for help from somewhere safe. I waited until morning, then got dressed quietly and packed a small bag. I left through the front door like I was going to work, but instead of taking the elevator down, I took the stairs up to the roof. From there, I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a serial killer. I have evidence that my roommate has murdered multiple people. The dispatcher kept me on the line while patrol cars were dispatched. I gave them Derek's address, his physical description, everything I could think of. 20 minutes later, I watched from the roof as police surrounded the building. They found Derek in his room, calmly packing a suitcase like he was getting ready for another business trip. He didn't resist arrest. According to the officers I spoke with later, he seemed almost relieved that it was over. The investigation that followed was massive. The FBI got involved, connecting Derek to missing persons cases across multiple states. They identified him as Robert Chen, a former psychiatric patient who'd been released from a facility in Nevada 3 years earlier. Robert had been moving from city to city, using different identities, targeting young men who fit a specific profile: isolated, professional, financially stable, with minimal family connections. He would live with them for months, studying their habits, earning their trust, then kill them and assume their identities for a while before moving on to the next victim. The other driver's licenses in his collection belonged to men who'd been missing for years. The FBI found evidence connecting Robert to at least 12 murders, possibly more. The worst part? I wasn't his first Jake Morrison. The real Jake Morrison had been Robert's victim 2 years earlier in Phoenix. Robert had been using his identity ever since, paying taxes, maintaining employment, living a completely fabricated life. I'd been living with a dead man's identity. The FBI helped me sort out the identity theft issues, but it took months to straighten out my credit, my employment records, my entire legal existence. Robert had been using my information for weeks before I even realized what was happening. That's why I keep my identity secret now. Why I don't show my face? Why I'm paranoid about privacy. Robert Chen is in prison for life, but there are others like him out there. People who can slip into your life so smoothly that you don't even realize you're in danger until it's too late. So what's the lesson here, folks? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. When your roommate's stories don't add up. When your belongings keep getting moved. When you feel like you're being watched in your own home. Pay attention to those red flags. I ignored so many warning signs because I wanted to believe I'd found the perfect living situation. I wanted to believe Derek was just a quirky, successful guy who happened to be a great roommate. But the perfect roommate doesn't exist. Normal people have flaws, make messes, forget to replace the milk they finished. When someone seems too good to be true, when their life seems too perfect, when they have an explanation for everything, that's when you should start asking questions. The FBI profiler I spoke with told me that people like Robert rely on their victims' politeness, their reluctance to seem paranoid or confrontational. They count on us making excuses for their behavior, accepting their explanations, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Don't give strangers the benefit of the doubt, especially strangers who want to live in your personal space. I know some of you are thinking this is all made up, that I'm just trying to get views with a crazy story. I get it. It sounds like fiction. But I've got the court records, the FBI case files, the news articles. Robert Chen is real. His victims were real, and I was almost one of them. I'm sharing this story not for views or attention, but because I want you to be careful. I want you to trust your instincts. I want you to remember that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the perfect roommate. Before I end this, let me tell you about the dreams. I still have them, almost every night. Dreams where I'm back in that apartment. But this time I drink the drugged coffee. This time I don't find the evidence. This time I become another driver's license in Robert's collection. I wake up checking the locks on my doors, checking the windows, checking the shadows in the corners of my room. The therapist says it's normal, that trauma manifests in different ways for different people. She says I'm lucky to be alive, that my paranoia probably saved my life. But I don't feel lucky. I feel like I'm living in a world where anyone could be a predator, where trust is a luxury I can't afford. That's why I make these videos. It's therapeutic in a way, sharing stories, connecting with people who understand that the world isn't always safe, that evil can wear a friendly face. So stay safe out there, everyone. Check your locks, trust your instincts, and remember, not everyone who seems perfect actually is. And if you're ever in a situation where something feels wrong, don't wait for proof. Don't wait for permission. Just get out. Your life might depend on it. I'm recording this update 6 months after the original video went viral. A lot has happened since then. First, Robert Chen was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The families of his victims finally got some closure, though nothing can bring back the people he killed. Second, my video led to 3 other people coming forward with similar stories. People who'd lived with roommates who seemed too perfect, who'd experienced the same red flags I'd ignored. 2 of them managed to escape before anything happened. 1 wasn't so lucky. Third, I've been working with law enforcement and victim advocacy groups to create resources for people in dangerous living situations. We're developing an app that helps people verify potential roommates' identities and report suspicious behavior. It's not much, but it's something. The point is, we're not powerless. We can protect ourselves and each other. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, you're never alone. Until next time, this is your anonymous storyteller signing off. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and please share your own experiences in the comments. Together, we can keep each other safe.